You don't belong here. This is for exclusive guests only. Wealthy party guests were pulling out their phones, recording what they thought was just another case of someone crashing an elite event. A woman in casual clothes was being dragged across the deck of a $15 million yacht while security guards gripped her arms. The hostess, a blonde woman named Rose, was screaming at the top of her lungs. To understand what's really happening here, you need to know who Brenda Brighton actually is. This woman being dragged off the yacht deck isn't some party crasher. She's the CEO of Brighton Maritime Holdings and a self-made billionaire who clawed her way up from the streets of Detroit to build a shipping empire worth over $3 billion. But Brenda's story isn't just about money. It's about a little black girl who grew up watching her mother work 3 jobs just to keep food on the table, who was told by teachers that she wasn't college material, and who built her first shipping business with a $1,000 loan from her grandmother's life insurance policy. Every dollar she earned, every deal she closed, every yacht she could afford, it all carried the weight of generations who never had these opportunities. That yacht she's being kicked off? The Sovereign Dream. It was her very first major purchase after her company went public. $15 million of pure luxury, and it represents everything she worked for. When she signed the papers for that yacht, Brenda broke down and cried in the lawyer's office, thinking about her grandmother who used to clean similar boats for wealthy families, never imagining her granddaughter would own one. But here's the thing about Brenda that makes this situation even more heartbreaking. Despite having more money than most people see in 10 lifetimes, she's known for her humility. She drives herself around in a regular car, dresses casually, and has this habit of testing people's character by watching how they treat ordinary folks. Because Brenda never forgot where she came from, and she never forgot how it felt to be invisible. And that habit is about to reveal something that will shatter her heart all over again. See, Brenda just went through a brutal divorce with her ex-husband, Michael, who managed to take half of everything she built in a settlement that left her questioning whether anyone could ever love her for who she truly was. The divorce papers cited irreconcilable differences, but Brenda knew the truth. Michael had grown uncomfortable with her success, especially when she became more successful than him. The settlement left her with serious trust issues and a deep fear that people only saw her wealth, never her humanity. Tonight was supposed to be her annual charity gala for ocean conservation, a cause close to her heart because her grandmother used to take her to Lake Michigan as a child, telling her that water connects all people, regardless of their color or class. 200 of the most influential people in Los Angeles were invited to raise money aboard her yacht, docked at the exclusive Marina del Rey. She hired elite events to coordinate everything because she'd been tied up with business, and honestly, she hired them sight unseen based on their reputation. But here's where it gets interesting. Brenda was running late from an emergency board meeting where she just learned that one of her shipping routes was being threatened by competitors who questioned whether a black woman could really run a maritime empire. She rushed straight from the office, emotionally drained, still wearing simple clothes, no entourage, no announcement of her arrival. Just the owner of the yacht showing up to her own party, hoping to find some peace in doing good for the world. The moment Brenda stepped onto her own yacht, Rose, the hostess from Elite Events, immediately approached her with suspicion. "Excuse me, ma'am, this is a private event? Do you have an invitation?" The words hit Brenda like a physical blow. For just a moment, she's 8 years old again, being followed around a department store by security guards who assumed she was going to steal something. She's 16 again, being told by a country club manager that there must be some mistake when she showed up for a job interview. She's 25 again, having venture capitalists question whether she was really the brains behind her business plan. Now, Brenda could have ended this right there. She could have said, "I'm Brenda Brighton. I own this yacht." But something in Rose's tone, that familiar dismissive quality she'd heard her entire life, tells her to dig deeper. So she simply says, "I'm here for the charity event." Rose's response was dripping with condescension. "Ma'am, I think there's been a mistake. This event has a very specific guest list. The way she emphasizes specific makes it clear what she really means, and Brenda feels that old familiar ache in her chest, the one that never quite goes away. Another staff member, Diane Young, noticed the tension building and tried to smooth things over. But Brenda watched carefully. She observed how Rose treated the other guests. White wealthy arrivals received warm smiles and enthusiastic greetings. The catering staff and service workers, mostly people of color, received cold, dismissive treatment. Brenda felt like she was watching her life story play out in real time. When Brenda tried to move toward the main deck where her party was happening, Rose called security. "We have a situation here," she announced loud enough for nearby guests to hear. People turned around, phones came out, and Brenda's humiliation became public entertainment. Each laugh from the crowd and each dismissive look cut deeper than the last. Kim Robert, Brenda's business partner and one of her closest friends, arrived and saw the commotion. She moved forward to intervene, but Rose blocked her. "Ma'am, please don't enable this situation," Rose told her, as if she was making things worse by trying to help. Brenda caught Kim's eye and gave her a subtle signal to stay back. She wanted to see exactly how far Rose would take this. She wanted to see how many people would stand by and watch, how many would record, and how many would speak up. In this moment, Brenda wasn't just testing Rose, she was testing humanity itself. Brenda Brighton hadn't become a billionaire by backing down from a fight, and Rose had just picked the wrong fight with the wrong woman. Rose continued her tirade, pointing aggressively at Brenda. "Security. Get her off this yacht immediately. She's ruining everything." The guests murmured, some laughed, others looked uncomfortable as they watched this black woman being treated like a criminal at what should have been the most exclusive party of the year. But Brenda didn't fight back. She didn't scream or cause a scene. She remained eerily calm, almost like she was studying every single person watching this humiliation unfold. Inside, though, her heart was breaking. Every laugh, every stare, every moment of being treated as less than human reopened wounds she thought had healed. The security guard, Tony Salaza, started hesitating. Something in Brenda's demeanor made him nervous. This wasn't how gatecrashers usually acted. There was a dignity in her silence, a strength in her stillness that made him question what he was doing. Then Brenda spoke, and her voice cut through all the chaos like a knife. "You have exactly 30 seconds to get your hands off me before you regret this for the rest of your life." The way she said it stopped everyone cold. There was no anger, no desperation, just absolute certainty, like she knew something they didn't. But beneath that calm exterior, Brenda fought back tears. Tears of rage, tears of disappointment, tears for every person who looked like her, who had to endure this kind of treatment in silence. Rose hadn't randomly decided to target Brenda. This had been systematic, and it had been planned from the very beginning. Later discoveries through leaked emails and recordings revealed the truth. When Elite Events was hired for this job, Rose had specifically requested to work this particular yacht because she thought the owner was overseas and wouldn't be attending. She saw this as her golden opportunity to impress her biggest client by what she called maintaining exclusivity. In a conversation with her assistant Lisa Parker earlier that day, Rose had made her intentions crystal clear. "We need to keep the wrong element out tonight," she had said. "This is about protecting the caliber of guests our clients expect." When Lisa asked what she meant, Rose's response was chilling. "You know exactly what I mean. We can't have certain people bringing down the atmosphere." For Brenda, overhearing these words was like being transported back to every painful moment of exclusion she'd ever experienced. The country clubs that found excuses not to accept her membership. The business dinners where she was the only black face in the room. The boardrooms where her ideas were dismissed until a white colleague repeated them. But it got worse. As Brenda stood there being humiliated, she overheard conversations between Rose and other staff members. They were talking about people like her not belonging at events like this. That's when Brenda realized something that made her blood run cold. Rose had been turning away guests all evening. Several Black and Latino attendees had already been refused entry or made to feel so unwelcome they left. Some of these people were major donors to ocean conservation. Business contacts Brenda had personally invited, people who had contributed millions to causes just like this one. Each rejection was a betrayal not just of Brenda, but of the very cause she was trying to support. Brenda's goddaughter, Tiffany Johnson, a successful lawyer in her own right, arrived at the yacht and was immediately swarmed by Rose and security. Tiffany was confused and tried to explain she was there for the charity gala when she spotted Brenda in the crowd. Brenda, why is this woman treating me like a criminal?" Tiffany called out, genuinely bewildered by the aggressive questioning. In that moment, Brenda's heart shattered completely. Tiffany was the daughter she never had, a brilliant young woman who represented everything Brenda had fought for. The next generation who was supposed to face fewer barriers, fewer assumptions, fewer moments like this. Seeing Tiffany subjected to the same discrimination was more painful than anything Rose could do to her personally. Rose immediately assumed Tiffany was Brenda's +1, as if a successful black woman couldn't possibly be there on her own merit. "Ma'am, if you're with this person, you both need to leave immediately," Rose declared. That was the moment Brenda realized this wasn't just about her anymore. This was about every person who looked like her, being made to feel like they didn't belong in spaces they had every right to occupy. This was about Tiffany, about her grandmother's memory, about every little black girl who would grow up believing she wasn't worthy of respect. Brenda tried one last diplomatic approach, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. "Perhaps we should call the yacht owner to resolve this situation," she suggested calmly. Rose's response was pure arrogance. "The owner is a very important businesswoman who doesn't associate with certain people." The pause before "certain people" said everything. Those words cut deeper than any physical blow could have. Here was Rose, speaking about Brenda in the third person, making assumptions about who she would and wouldn't associate with, all while standing on the deck of the yacht Brenda had bought with money earned through decades of fighting exactly this kind of prejudice. When Brenda pulled out her phone to prove her identity, security immediately escalated the situation. Rose shouted, "Ma'am, I don't care what fake documents you have. Anyone can Photoshop an ID." That's when things turned physical. Security tried to grab Brenda's phone, and the situation exploded into a full confrontation in front of 200 wealthy guests who were now recording everything. Every hand that grabbed her, every shove, every moment of physical humiliation was captured on dozens of phones, turning her pain into entertainment. Brenda's composure, which had held through everything up to this point, finally cracked. "I am the owner of this yacht," she declared, her voice carrying across the deck with all the authority of someone who had clawed their way from poverty to power. Rose's response was doubled-down aggression. "That's impossible. You're delusional if you think anyone believes that." Those words, delusional, hit Brenda like a slap. How many times had she been called delusional for dreaming big? How many times had people suggested her success was a fluke, a mistake, something that couldn't possibly be real? Kim Robert tried desperately to confirm Brenda's identity, but Rose shut her down completely. Meanwhile, Tiffany had started recording everything on her phone, capturing every second of this unbelievable discrimination. Through her tears of anger and frustration, Tiffany documented proof of what so many people refused to believe still happened. If you were in Brenda's shoes, what would you have done? Would you introduce yourself and fire Rose, or will you calmly leave to avoid escalating the issue? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more stories like this. That's when Brenda delivered an ultimatum that would change everything. You have 30 seconds to apologize and step aside, or face the consequences. The 30 seconds were almost up when everything changed in an instant. Captain Choi, who had been below deck handling yacht operations, emerged onto the main deck to check on the evening's festivities. The moment he saw the commotion, his eyes immediately found Brenda in the crowd, and his face went completely white. "Miss Brighton, ma'am, what's happening here?" Captain Choi called out, rushing toward the confrontation with genuine concern and confusion. The color drained from Rose's cheeks. Her mouth fell open, and for the first time all evening, she was completely speechless. The arrogant hostess who had been so confident about kicking out the wrong element suddenly looked like she was about to be sick. But the revelation was just beginning. Guests who had been recording and laughing started looking more closely at Brenda. Someone in the crowd whispered, "Wait, isn't that Brenda Brighton from Forbes magazine?" Another voice chimed in, "Oh my God, that's the CEO of Brighton Maritime Holdings." The shift in the crowd was palpable. Phones that had been recording for entertainment were now capturing what everyone realized was a career-ending mistake. The woman they had watched being humiliated and physically manhandled wasn't some party crasher. She was one of the most powerful business leaders in the country, and they had just witnessed her being discriminated against on her own yacht. For Brenda, this moment of recognition was bittersweet. Yes, they finally saw her for who she was, but only because her wealth and status had been revealed. Would they have cared if she was just a regular person being treated this way? The answer, she knew, was probably not. James Morrison, the coordinator from Elite Events, arrived on deck to check on their biggest client's event. Instead, he found absolute chaos surrounding the very person who was paying his company's largest contract of the year. Brenda, still maintaining her composure despite everything, stepped forward to address the entire crowd of guests. Her voice carried across the deck with quiet authority, but those who looked closely could see the tears she was fighting back. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want you all to understand what you just witnessed. This evening, multiple guests were turned away or made unwelcome at this charity event simply because of the color of their skin. You watched as I was physically assaulted and humiliated on my own property by people who assumed I didn't belong here." Rose, now realizing the magnitude of her mistake, started desperately trying to backtrack. "Miss Brighton, please, there's been a terrible misunderstanding. I never meant, I was just trying to protect the event. I had no idea." But Brenda wasn't finished. What makes this even more disturbing is that we're not the only ones this happened to tonight. Other guests who had been discriminated against earlier began stepping forward. Maria Rodriguez, a prominent Latina philanthropist, spoke up about being questioned extensively about her right to be there. Dr. James Washington, a respected Black surgeon and major donor, shared how he had been made to feel so unwelcome that he almost left. Each story that emerged painted a picture of systematic discrimination that had been happening all evening while the other guests enjoyed their cocktails, completely unaware. For Brenda, hearing these stories was both validating and heartbreaking. Validating because it proved she wasn't alone, heartbreaking because it meant the problem was even bigger than she'd realized. Brenda looked directly at Rose, then at the crowd of guests who had their phones out. "This ends now, and it ends publicly," she declared. "What happened here tonight cannot be hidden or explained away." Then came the bombshell that made Rose's face go even whiter, if that was possible. "I want everyone to know that this entire evening, including everything that just transpired, has been recorded by my yacht's comprehensive security camera system. Every conversation, every interaction, every moment of discrimination has been captured in high definition." The silence that followed was deafening. Rose's career imploded in real time as she realized that her conversations with Lisa Parker, her treatment of other guests, and her systematic exclusion of Black and Latino attendees had all been documented. The guests who had been laughing and recording earlier were now looking at their own phones, realizing they had participated in something that was about to become a very public reckoning with discrimination in their elite social circles. What happened next was swift and absolute. "Rose, you're terminated. Effective immediately," Brenda announced in front of everyone. "Tony Salaza and the security team who participated in this, you're also done. Get off my yacht." James Morrison from Elite Events tried desperately to salvage the situation, but Brenda cut him off. "Your company just lost its biggest contract. You'll also be hearing from my legal team about the systematic discrimination your staff implemented at my event." Rose tried one final desperate plea, but Brenda had heard enough. Then, she did something that nobody expected. She stepped to the center of the deck and addressed her guests with a speech that would be remembered for years. Tonight was supposed to be about ocean conservation, about bringing people together for a cause bigger than ourselves. Instead, It became a painful lesson about the discrimination that still exists in our society. What you witnessed wasn't an isolated incident. It was a window into how people are treated every day based on assumptions about who belongs and who doesn't. Her voice broke slightly as she continued, the emotional weight of the evening finally showing through her composed exterior. She paused, looking around at the faces of some of the most powerful people in Los Angeles. But here's what we're going to do about it. Because of what happened tonight, because of the lesson learned about true character, I'm doubling my planned donation to ocean conservation. Instead of $5 million, I'm donating $10 million. The crowd erupted in applause, but Brenda wasn't finished. More importantly, this incident will serve as a catalyst for change. Every business I own will now implement comprehensive diversity and inclusion training. We're going to make sure this never happens again. The impact was immediate and far-reaching. Tiffany's recorded video of the incident went viral within hours, sparking conversations about unconscious bias in the luxury industry. The hashtag Yachtgate started trending as people shared their own stories of discrimination in elite spaces. Elite events didn't just lose Brenda's contract. Within a week, several major clients had canceled their agreements after seeing the footage. The company that had built its reputation on exclusivity discovered that exclusion based on race was a business model nobody wanted to support. But the most powerful moment came when Brenda made a decision that would define the rest of her advocacy. She realized that her wealth and platform gave her a responsibility she had been too private to embrace before. I've spent years building my business quietly, staying out of the spotlight, she reflected to the remaining guests, her voice thick with emotion. But what happened tonight showed me that silence in the face of discrimination is complicity. From now on, I'm going to be visible in this fight. The yacht party continued, but with a completely different energy. It became a genuine celebration of diversity and inclusion, with guests sharing stories, making connections across racial lines, and committing to real change in their own organizations. Tiffany's video became a teaching tool used in corporate diversity training programs across the country. It showed not just the ugly reality of discrimination, but also the power of maintaining dignity in the face of prejudice. As the evening wound down, Brenda stood at the bow of her yacht, looking out at the ocean. She thought about her grandmother, who had cleaned boats like this one for wealthy families, never imagining her granddaughter would own one. She thought about all the little girls who looked like her, who deserved to dream big without being told they didn't belong. She had turned a night of humiliation into a moment of transformation, not just for herself, but for everyone who witnessed it. The pain was still there. It might always be there, but it had been transformed into purpose. The real power, she told a reporter later, wiping away a tear, isn't in the yacht or the money. It's in using your platform to make sure the next person who looks like me doesn't have to go through what I went through. And this was just the beginning. Brenda Brighton had found her voice as an advocate, and she was about to take on the entire luxury industry's discrimination problem. Sometimes, the most powerful response to hatred isn't anger. It's strategic action that creates lasting change. And sometimes, the most important battles are fought not with fists, but with dignity, grace, and the unshakable belief that everyone deserves to be treated with respect, regardless of the color of their skin. Brenda's fight against discrimination in elite spaces was just getting started, and her next move was going to shake up an entire industry. If you enjoyed this story, like, subscribe, and share with others so they can learn too. See you in our next video.